Hey, what's up guys? This video is for section 4.3, which is writing equations in point-slope form. So far, you guys have learned two different forms of linear functions. The first one was the standard form. The second one I show you guys in my class is the slope-intercept form. Well, this is the third one, and it is called the point-slope form. Now, what does it look like? It's right on the screen. You guys have y minus y sub 1, there's a little 1 under the y here, equals m times the quantity of x minus x1, sub 1, which is the little 1 here. M is going to be your slope, so you guys remember that's the variable that we use. So here's the slope of a line, and we are talking about linear functions, so that's why we have a slope. So the m is outside the parentheses. And in this form, we use a point that's on the line. That's why it's called the point and the slope, point-slope form. And the point we use has an x and a y coordinate, or an x value and a y value. X sub 1 is the one from the point, and the y sub 1 is the one from the point that we know that's on the line. So the way you guys set it up is the x sub 1 goes inside of the parentheses with the x. This is your regular x variable. It's not going to be a number, it's just x here. And y sub 1 is going to be a number next to the regular y. And this is your y equals, and then you might have different forms of the linear function. So you can have y equals mx plus b, y equals 5, y equals 2x minus 2, whatever it is, but that's the variable that we use for the y. So y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x sub 1. That is your point-slope form. Now let's go ahead and connect everything together, because when you guys have three different forms of a linear function, there's actually three ways you guys can write the function. So you guys see the picture here, or the graph. And this line is going downhill. First of all, we have to understand that. So the slope is -1. It's going down, so that's negative. And it says that it's -1 here. And a point on the line, notice we have the line, and there's a point here on the line, which is 1, -2. Now, when you guys want to write the point-slope form using this, and I'm going to say formula, but it's just a form for the linear function, you can substitute the x and the y into the formula, and you guys substitute the m. So I'm going to label this for you guys so you understand where the numbers go. I'm going to say this number is x1 for the point, and this number is your y1 for the point. So notice that I already have my point-slope form here. So I have y plus 2 equals negative times the quantity of x minus 1. So let's pay attention and understand where the numbers come from. Notice that in the formula, or in this form, we have y minus y1. But when you look at y1, it's negative. So if you guys have a minus and you substitute, you're going to multiply by a negative number. Negative times negative is going to become positive. So there's your y plus 2. Your variable m is the slope, and in this case the slope is -1. So I don't need that 1 next to the parentheses. It's an invisible 1, but I do need the negative. So here's the negative invisible 1, and inside of the parentheses we need the x1. So we have x minus x1, and x1 is positive, doesn't have a negative, so a negative times a positive will be a negative, -1. So my point-slope form for this graph is x plus 2 equals negative times the quantity of x minus 1. Notice that I don't distribute the negative. You don't have to do that when you have the point-slope form. And the y does not have to be by itself. That's what it looks like. That's what it is, the point-slope form. You can also change this form into slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and understand what this is, okay? Slope-intercept form, first of all, is when you guys have y by itself. So there's the y by itself equals, and then we have mx plus b. So y equals negative x minus 1 is the slope-intercept form. Now what happens from here all the way here? Well, in order to get rid of the parentheses, notice we don't have parentheses in the slope-intercept form. You have to distribute the negative. That's what you do. And then this number, the positive 2, you take it to the other side. You're going to do minus 2. And eventually, it's going to simplify to this form, y equals negative x minus 1. Now, make that connection. This equation is the same line as this equation. So if you guys want to graph this line, y equals mx plus b, so m, your slope is negative 1. Guess what? There's your slope, negative 1. Your y-intercept is negative 1. Guess what? Right here is negative 1. So this line crosses the negative 1 on the y-axis, and it has a slope of negative 1. So it is the same line. So these two look different, those two equations, but they represent the same graph, the same line. Now, you can also change this slope-intercept form into standard form. So you guys can get the x and the y on the same side. That is standard form. X cannot be negative. You guys cannot have fractions or decimals. Remember that you only can have integers, but x has to be positive, and the x and the y has to be on the same side, and the variable, the constant has to be on the other side of the equal sign. So to do that, guys, when you look at the slope-intercept form, you can take this minus x, you add x to both sides, you take this to the other side, and you have your positive x plus y equals negative 1. Now this, guys, right here, it has a slope of negative 1, and the y-intercept is negative 1. And I know that because this equation came from the slope-intercept form. So if this slope-intercept form has a slope of negative 1 and the y-intercept to be negative 1, this will be the same thing. So these three forms, point-slope form, slope-intercept form, and standard form, represent the same graph. In my class, I'm not going to ask you guys for all three forms for one graph, but you really have to know how to graph depending on what form you might have. You can have slope-intercept form, you can have standard form, or you can have the point-slope form, and you have to understand how to graph it, and also have to change from one form to the other one. So I'm going to give you guys the point-slope form, and I'm going to ask you guys, change this into slope-intercept form. Or I might ask you, change this into standard form. So you guys need to learn how to do that, and also you need to learn where to substitute the numbers. So let's go ahead and look at the point-slope again, point-slope form. When I ask you guys for that form, you need to know where to substitute the numbers. So we have the form y minus y sub 1 equals the slope m times a quantity, parentheses, x minus x sub 1. So first, let's go ahead and get familiar with this point-slope form. Have to write it and then have to use it so we can graph our linear function, our line in the coordinate plane. So it says here, you guys want to write an equation in point-slope form that passes through each point with a given slope, and then we want to graph the line. So let's go ahead and look at example number 1 here. We have a point. It's already given to us, 2, negative 1. So that point, guys, it's on the line. So we know the line is going to cross that point at 2, negative 1. So I'm just going to graph it so you understand what's happening and what's going to happen in the graph. So 2, negative 1, when I go 2 to the right, 1 down, is right here. So notice on my graphing coordinate plane. So 2 to the right, 1 down. So my line is going to cross this point. Now look at the slope. My slope is negative 3. So what that means, my line is going to go down. So you're going to have a line going down like this, but it has to cross that point because that point is on the line. But first, let's go ahead and write down the point-slope form. So I'm going to label x1 and y1. So here's my x1, here's my y1. So notice that I put those for my points. I have my slope, m is negative 3. I'm going to write down the formula or the point-slope form. y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'm going to substitute the numbers into the corresponding variable. So I do have y1 here, and I have a negative 1 here. So that means I'm going to have double negatives because I have a minus, and then I'm going to have a negative 1 here. I'm going to substitute. So I have y minus, and I'm going to substitute my negative 1 here, equals, now my slope is negative 3, so I substitute the negative 3 there, times the quantity of x minus and x1. Notice x1 is positive, so I don't have to worry about the double negatives. I'm just going to put a 2 right here, and I'm going to close parentheses. I am going to simplify the double negatives. So these two right here, minus and a minus, minus, negative times negative is positive. So I'm going to have y plus 1 equals, and I have negative 3 times x, the quantity of x, minus 2. Now that's it. That's the point slope form. You don't have to distribute the negative 3. You guys don't have to get the y by itself. That's something else when you do that. Right now we stop there, and my answer for my point slope form is y plus 1 equals negative 3 times the quantity of x minus 2. Now guess what, guys? From that equation, from that form, the point slope form, you can graph the line doing the following. First of all, we know what the point is. My point is 2, negative 1. Now imagine, guys, that the actual point is not given to you, but you know what the equation is. This is what you can do. When you guys know that this is y1 and this is x1, you can find the point by changing the signs of the numbers. So I want you guys to look at what happens to the signs here. Notice that my y1 here, notice that's the formula y1. y1 is positive, but my point is negative. So you really have to change the sign here to write your point. So negative 1, when I change the sign, is y1. And my x1, notice I have a minus 2, but my actual point has a positive 2. So my negative 2 becomes positive 2. So you guys can change the signs to write down your point. Now you just have to be careful which one is your x1, this is x1, which one is your y1. So let me just do that right now. Even though we had the point already, I'm going to rewrite the point by changing the signs. So my x1 minus 2, I change it to positive 2. And my y1 positive 1, I change it to negative 1. And notice we have the same point as the one given to us. So that's the point we have. That's how you start. You start by plotting the point on the coordinate plane. The next step is you guys use your slope. Now my slope is negative 3. So I'm going to write it down here. M equals negative 3. And every time I use my slope to graph, I need a fraction because I need the rise and the run. So my rise is negative 3 and my run is 1. And let me just write that down so you guys remember. And using the rise and the run, I am going to find a second point. So from the point that is given to us, 2, negative 1, 2 to the right, minus 1 here, 1 down. I'm going to go 3 down, that's the rise, negative 3. So from here, 1, 2, 3, and 1 to the right. And I make another point right here. And you guys can do that again. From here, 1, 2, 3, 1 to the right. So you make another point. Or you guys can go the other way, opposite direction. Instead of going down, you guys can go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 1 to the left, because that's the opposite. So you guys can do that too. How many points do you need? Well, at least you guys need 2 points to make a line. But if you have 3, 4, 5, 6, that's going to be more accurate. Now this is just depending on your teacher. Just make sure you know how many points your teacher wants. For me, 2 is sufficient. I made 4 so you guys can actually see the points. So I'm just going to draw my line. And you guys see that line right there. It has a slope of negative 3 and it goes through the point 2, negative 1. Okay, so let's try the next one here. The next one, you guys have the points negative 3, 2, and the slope is a fraction. That's good because we can see the rise and the run. M equals 2 over 3. So first, let's go ahead and write down the point slope form. Here is the form, and I also label my x1 and y1. So in that point, the given point, we have x sub 1, y sub 1. So I'm going to substitute the y sub 1 here. I'm going to substitute the x sub 1 over here. Check your signs. Sometimes you have double negatives, so we're going to have to simplify. And my slope is 2 over 3. So when I do that, I'm going to substitute y minus, and y1 is 2. So notice I don't have to do the double negatives because this is already positive. So I just put minus 2 equals, and we have the slope of 2 over 3 times the quantity of x minus. Now notice x1 is negative 3. So I'm going to have to use parentheses with the negative here. Negative 3, and you guys close parentheses. So we do have double negatives right here. So I'm going to turn that into positive. Negative times negative is positive. And I have y minus 2. My slope is 2 over 3 times the quantity of x plus 3. Okay, so we got our point slope form. Do not distribute. You do not have to multiply the fraction to the parentheses. That's something else. You leave it as it is. Y doesn't have to be by itself once again. So that is the point slope form. Let me just put a box around my answer. So now I'm going to graph the line. Now, you guys already have the point here. Remember, if you guys do not have the point, you can change the sign of the y1 and the x1. Just make sure you guys put in this on the correct order. x1 always goes first. So the positive 3 becomes negative, and the minus 2 becomes positive. And my slope, I already have my slope, is 2 over 3. And it's also here, guys. You can see the slope is 2 over 3 next to the parentheses. So you guys can use your points and your slope. So I'm going to graph the point first. And it's going to be at negative 3, positive 2. So you guys see the points right here. It's negative 3, 1, 2, 3, and 2 up. So that's the given point. Remember, this is negative. You change the sign, negative 3, and this is positive 2. Actually, let me just rewrite the point so you guys see that it is the same. That positive 3 becomes negative 3, and the minus 2 becomes positive 2. And my slope, I already have it. Even though it's on the top, I'm going to write it. It's next to the parentheses right here. So I have 2 over 3. It's a fraction already. So I just need to use the rise and the run. So from the given point, I'm going to go 2 up, 1, 2, and I made a second point. So notice I started from here, negative 3, 2, and I went up to 3 to the right. So I have that point. Now that's sufficient. You guys can connect the points and you make your line. Or you guys can do that again from this point here. You can use the slope, 1, 2 up, 1, 2, 3. And you guys can make another point right there. So at least 2 points to make your line. You guys can make 3 to be more accurate. So let me draw my line here. And we have the graph. So this graph has a positive slope. It's going uphill, 3 over 2. That's the slope. And it's crossing the point negative 3, 2 right there. And this point slope form is y minus 2 equals 2 over 3 times the quantity of x plus 3. So let's do a few more. Okay, so the next one here, it has a given point, negative 7, 6. It has a slope of 0. So right away, guys, you should know what direction the line goes when the slope is 0. And it is horizontal. It's going from left to right. So my line is going to go from left to right like this. And I'm going to have the slope of 0. So it helps you if you guys know the type of slope you have and what direction the line will have. So first, let's go ahead and write down the point slope form. So I'm going to label here my x1, y1, and I'm going to write down the point slope form. So all you do, guys, you substitute the numbers again, the numbers into the corresponding variable. So I'm going to do that. I have y minus y1 is positive, so I'm just going to put a 6 right there. And then we have equals m is 0, so you put a 0, m, the slope is 0, times the quantity of x minus, now my x1 is negative 7, so I'm going to have to use parentheses because I have double negative. Negative 7 goes here, and you guys will simplify the double negatives. I do have a negative inside this parentheses and a negative outside of that parentheses. So double negative turns into positive. So I'm going to have y minus 6 equals 0 times the quantity of x plus 7. But guess what, guys? If you think about the concept of 0, you are multiplying 0 times the quantity of whatever this is inside of the parentheses. But what's anything times 0? 0. So all of this right here, guys, turns into 0. So I'm going to write it as y minus 6 equal to 0. That's it. That is your point-slope form. You guys have the y minus 6 on one side and equal to 0 on the other side. Now, to graph it, okay? Now, I know it looks weird with the 0 there, but that's is what it is. You guys have a horizontal line, and you guys will have your line going sideways. So using the point, the given point, remember the given point is negative 7, 6. So I'm going to plot that point. And right there, guys, that is my given point. You guys can see it graphed on the coordinate plane. So all you do now, guys, since we know the slope is 0, you guys are going to have your line going sideways. So I'm just going to draw the line going sideways because it's horizontal. And there you go. You guys have that line. Do not get confused, guys, when you have a 0 slope and if your slope is undefined, because students do get confused. When you guys have a slope of 0, it is the line going to be horizontal. It's going to be sideways from left to right. But if you guys have a vertical line, that means you guys have undefined. So the slope will be undefined. We don't know what it is. And that's going to be a vertical going up and down. Now, something extra I want to show you guys on this one, okay? Let's say that if you guys get the y by itself right here, okay? To get y by itself, you need to add 6 to both sides. You have to do the opposite of this one, plus 6 and plus 6. So if you guys do that, I'm going to have y equals positive 6. And guess what? This line right there is going to cross the y-axis at 6. And since this comes from this one, it has to be the same line. So let me check on the y-axis. Here's the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the line crosses at 6 on the y-axis because it is the same equation. It's just written differently. But you guys don't have to get the y by itself here because we are looking for the point-slope form. So this is sufficient. You guys are okay. If in the class they ask you, they tell you guys to get the y by itself, then that's what you do. You get y by itself and you can say y equals 6. All right, now this one's is kind of going backwards. They have the graph already, but we want to write the point-slope form for each one of them. So first, for each graph. So first, let me write down the form so you guys know what we need to use. And it is y minus y1 equals the slope m times the quantity of x minus x1. So we do need the x1, the y1, and that's from your points, and we need the slope. Now the good thing is that in each graph, notice they give us the slope. The slope is negative 3, and they actually give us a point. Here we have a point, and we have the slope. So all we have to do is substitute the numbers in the correct spot. So first, I'm going to label for my graph on the left side, this is my x1 and my y1 right there, and I do have my slope negative 3. So I'm just going to substitute into the form. That's what they want. They want us to write an equation in point-slope form. So I'm going to have y minus, let's go ahead and look at y1. Okay, it's positive 4, so I just put a 4 right here, equals m is negative 3, so I put negative 3, I substitute, negative 3 times the quantity of x minus, and x1, oh, it's negative 1, so I need parentheses because I'm going to have double negatives, so that's going to be negative 1 here. I need to simplify this double negative right there. Negative times a negative is a positive, so I have y minus 4 equals there's your negative 3 slope times the quantity of x plus 1. So my answer in point slope form is right there. I don't need to distribute the negative 3 again. I don't have to do that because I am not changing that into slopeness of form or standard form. We're going to do that in my second video. I'm going to have to do a second part for this section. But right now, you just leave it as it is, the negative 3 outside the parentheses. You guys do not have to get the y by itself. So we got the point slope form. So let's go ahead and try this one on the right side. So notice that my points is going to be x1 and my y1 goes here. My slope is 0, so that's going to make our life a lot easier. But I'm going to substitute into the formula. I have y minus y1, it's positive 3, so I just put a 3 right there, equals my slope is 0 times the quantity of x minus x1, and x1 is negative 2. So I'm going to substitute with parentheses because I'm going to have double negatives with the negative 2. I have to simplify the negatives, the double negatives, negative times the negative is a positive. So I have y minus 3 equals 0 times x plus 2. But let's go back to the concept of 0. Anything times 0 is 0. You are multiplying all of this times 0. You multiply by 0. So what you can do is rewrite it as y minus 3 equal to 0. And that is my answer in point slope form. Alright guys, so this concludes my video. I will have a second part for this section, so make sure you guys check that video out as well. If you guys like my videos, make sure you guys hit that like button, and you guys can also subscribe to my channel. Make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.